All right, I think I'm going to start because we got a lot to get through today. We have this amazing group. We have 100 people here already. We're expecting a lot more, but we're just going to jump in. So, welcome, welcome, welcome everyone tonight to this information session, learning clinic on launching your own microschool. We have two amazing guests with us tonight. Joanna, sorry, Joanna from Fuller Education and Latoya from Attuned Community School. And we're really excited to profile them and share the story of them building their school. We're also going to do a little mini dive on financial sustainability, which I know is such a hugely important question for so many of you. So I'm going to share some of the tips and tricks that we share and a sort of a hypothetical income statement for a micro school. So you can see what that might look like for you. As an introduction, I am Amar Kumar. I'm the founder and CEO of KaiPod Learning. I started this company almost exactly 4 years ago today, with a hope and a dream that parents coming out of the pandemic were going to want new options for their kids. That teachers were going to want new careers for their profession. And we created this company to create new learning environments, micro schools, learning pods, hybrid schools, and to really empower teachers like you, parents like you, community leaders like you to start these schools. And a couple of years ago, we converted all of the stuff we had done into this Catalyst program, which I'm going to share more about tonight. And really, the vision behind all of it is how do we create tens of thousands of beautiful new schools across the country so kids can be in a school that they love, so parents can choose the school that's right for their kid, and teachers and founders of these schools can finally take ownership over their career. So that's why we started KaiPod. So we're going to get into some of that tonight. Here's the agenda for this evening. We're going to start talking about microschooling and do a quick overview of the national landscape and what we're seeing across the country. I'm going to share a few slides about the Catalyst program. I'm assuming most of you know a little bit about the program, so I'm not going to go super deep in this section because I really want to get to our alumni, but we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions and answers. So if you have specific questions about the program, you're welcome to ask there. We'll ask some questions, and I'm going to share some next steps for what comes ahead. All right, so I'm going to jump in. Matt's going to keep track of the chat in case you have questions. He'll interrupt me. Please feel free to just type your questions right in the chat if you have them as we're going through this. All right, let us dive in. So you may have all heard about the NAEP report that came out a couple of weeks ago. It's the National Assessment for Educational Progress. It's sort of called the nation's report card. Every 2 years, they take a test. Fourth and eighth graders take a test to sort of see how are we doing nationally? Are we making progress on math, reading, and some other subjects? And sadly, but not surprisingly, probably to most of you who are here, the reading scores are going down. Our fourth grade reading scores are the lowest in decades. And you probably know that if a child isn't reading proficiently by fourth grade, their overall life outcomes are much worse. And you look in the orange line is the proficient scores, and the blue line is the below basic. These are the percentage of kids, 40% of kids who are below basic in reading in fourth grade. And the story is much worse for the students who have higher needs, whether that's students with disabilities, free and reduced lunch, Black and Hispanic kids. They're actually taking a step backwards. It's getting worse. We are failing our kids day after day. The highest performing state in the country, this chart is too small to read. The highest performing state in the country, it's Massachusetts, actually is where I live. Only 40% of the kids in fourth grade can read at grade level. That's the highest. And you look at the lowest, it's really sad. These kids are not being set up for success. And we keep trying, we keep saying, let's give more money to the schools. And if that were the problem, we would have solved it by now. Here's the picture on money. The green line shows you how much spending has gone up in the last 10 years in public education. It's gone up way faster than the rate of inflation, which is that gray line. But at the same time, our math and reading scores, they're declining. This is not a problem of money. This is a 3-alarm fire. And we need to do something about it. And I think you all know this. I don't have to beat this drum for too long. And what's really exciting to me to see is that families are taking charge. They are not waiting. So you see here on the left, these three circles shows the percentage of families who say, I am ready to search for a new school for my child. I'm no longer satisfied with what they're in. It was 52% a couple of years ago, then 54. Look at that huge jump last year. 72% of families, 3 out of 4 families are saying, I'm ready for a change. And then the chart on the right is really exciting. This is the percentage of families who look for certain school options. And if you see the black bar, which is the latest year, and you look at that last line on microschooling and hybrid learning, a couple of years ago, 5% of families said, I'm looking for this. 16% said that last year. 16% of about 50 million kids, that's a lot of kids. And so there is a huge rise in demand, and parents are saying, I'm ready to take charge because I don't think the school system's doing it. And state policymakers, so your legislatures in all these wonderful states, they're taking note. And you see the rise in these private school choice programs that are getting onto the books year by year. That has gone up exponentially. And the reason that's important is now it starts to level the playing field for microschools, for hybrid schools, for private schools, with all the other options that exist. It starts to say parents can take their tax dollars to the school of their choice. And not only is that policy, it's actually being taken up. The number of students that are participating in these programs is going up exponentially. We have more than 1 million kids this last school year who've taken advantage of these choice programs. And so what that means is we have more and more people saying, I'm ready for an alternative. Who's going to build it for me? I'm ready for an alternative. I now have an ESA or an education savings account from my state. Where can I use this? That's what we're here to talk about tonight. Microschools, which we're going to spend some time on tonight, are started by educators, people who are teachers, special education administrators, school principals, district leaders, homeschool parents, community leaders. It quite literally changes their life. And one of these quotes here is from Joanna, who we're going to hear from today, but there's a lot of other founders who just say, I can't believe this is happening. This is the best start to the school year I've ever had. I'm so excited I get to change a child's relationship with learning. So we're just so excited to be doing this work because there is something momentous happening in American education, and you all get to build it. And that's never been true before. Okay, so that's kind of the national context. I'm going to get into the KaiPod Catalyst program. I'm going to share a few things about it. We really, really believe this is the #1 program in the country for education entrepreneurs by a long shot. And we're really proud of what we've built. We have a very, very selective program, so we accept very few founders into our community because we believe in a long-term partnership. This is not just a short program. You're going to hear me say that a lot. It's not just a short program where I kind of sell you some stuff. No, this is a long-term partnership. I want you to build a beautiful new school in your community that serves kids, that's sustainable, that changes your life too as an educator. So we accept the founders that we think can do it. We have more than 150 people who've gone through this program, and our success rate, so the founders we help, they're launching schools at 6 times the rate of the national average. This is a hard journey. So for us to be able to increase the rate by 6 times, we're really proud of that. So it's just a quick overview of the highlights of the program. Here's what it is. So we have 2 phases. It's the startup phase and it's your operations phase. In the startup phase, in the time period that you're planning to start your school, you get 3 huge advantages from the Catalyst program. The first is content, which is there's a full self-paced course that you step through to understand everything you need to know to start your school. So it sort of allows you to know what's coming next. You're not going to be surprised by, oh, I have to figure this zoning thing out or this compliance thing. It's all laid out for you. There's a playbook to help you do local marketing. There's deep dives on regulation. There's financial planning and models for you. So really the goal here is we want to give you everything that you will need to start your school. And we built it because we launched the first 19 schools in the KaiPod network ourselves. So when we did that, we took everything we learned and converted it into tools for you. And everything we needed over those last 4 years, it's been converted into templates. We paid attorneys, we paid people to do all this stuff. Now we're converting it into templates so you don't have to pay anyone for this stuff. So that includes a website template, flyers, family handbooks, employee handbooks, hiring forms, job descriptions, permission slips, everything else you need. Dozens and dozens of pre-built templates ready for you if you join the program. The second part is coaching. So if I just gave you a textbook on how to start a school, not many of you would get there. So the second part of this is the coaching, the one-on-one support, the accountability groups to keep you on track. This is a hard journey. You can't do it alone without a community to lean on. And I can say without a doubt, the Catalyst founders are the most vibrant educator community anywhere in this country. They support each other, they celebrate each other, they lift each other up when someone's fallen. And so we allow you to connect and collaborate with the rest of that online community. We have expert workshops. We have master sessions on topics that are most interesting to founders. We do office hours, so you can book office hours with anyone, me and anyone on my team, to go through a specific issue. So you're going to get some really hands-on support from the team that built the largest microschool network in this country. And then finally, you've got this really deep community. So 150 plus founders, so they're all on the same journey as you. Some are a little ahead, some are a little behind, but we're all going on this journey to start a school in your community. So you get to lean on them and they get to lean on you. And that's a really beautiful thing. So that's what you get as part of the startup. So as while you're planning your school, you have access to all these things, but then it's not over. This is not just a short-term program. This is a supportive network that's really committed to your success. And we break that up into 4 buckets. The first, in some cases, most important for a lot of founders, is marketing. You want to fill your school because that determines whether you are financially sustainable, whether you can pay yourself, whether you can support your own family. And so this is a really important thing that we provide is marketing support. If you go to our website right now, you'll see something called Find a Microschool. All of our partners are listed on that page. And so all of our activities drive new families across the country to that page. And so if they happen to be in your zip code, they'll end up on your website. We do national advertising on behalf of our founders. We do PR pitches on behalf of our founders. We support you with your local activities, whether you're running a popsicles in the park event or some sort of an open house, we're there to help you because marketing is really important. The second bit we help you with once you've launched is academics because you want to make sure you're doing right by your kids. And sometimes that can be hard to know in a microschool because there's so much flexibility. So we have a dashboard called the School Health Report that helps you see how you're doing relative to other founders. We allow you to do the MAP assessment on our behalf so you can see how kids are growing in one school year. We run professional development courses. We have an enrichment library. We have discounts on curriculum, et cetera, et cetera. And then one thing I'm really excited about is we're going to be able to offer accreditation very soon as well. And that's going to be huge for those of you in Texas, in Tennessee, in Georgia, where you're going to need to be accredited in order to be eligible for the education savings accounts. And so we're really working on that because we know how important it is for you all. The third area we help you with in long term is software and operations. It's complex running a school. There's 1,000 moving parts. And so our microschool management software is called Newton. It allows you to enroll families, bill families, take attendance, communicate with parents, share photos, store documents, plan their lessons. It allows you to do a lot of stuff and it keeps getting better and better. You have access to that. We help you with hiring. So if you need to hire an educator, we can post it on our hiring platforms where we get tens of thousands of reviews. We help you with HR stuff if you need it. And then we have a connection, a network of accountants, attorneys, grant writers. So if you need to access those, we have discounted rates with them and you just pay them directly at a discounted rate. So you get a lot of support for your school's operations. And then finally, the community doesn't end when you launch your school. In fact, that's when the community becomes even more critical. And so we continue to connect you through virtual founder happy hours. You get access to the rest of the community. This year, we're going to start doing some in-person events and conferences, given how important that is to build connection. So that's a very quick overview of the KaiPod Catalyst program. I'm happy to get into more questions later, but really I want you to sort of take away that this is a very especially designed program for people on this journey. And once you launch, the support doesn't end. It continues because we're really committed to your long-term success. Now I want to share a couple of stories before we get into our alumni about schools that they've started. So those of you in Florida, you may have heard about Alexandra. She's a little bit of a celebrity in the microschool space there. She started a school with us a couple of years ago. She started off in a small retail storefront and built her wonderful learning center called Steps Learning Center for elementary age students with high special needs. She's got about 20 kids today, a couple of part-time staff members. Students can come in with a therapist, get the services right at the school. She provides aftercare. She's really just changed the lives of so many kids in Orlando. We have, and those of you in Texas, we have Jordan is this wonderful school principal who started his first micro school in a co-working space. And he wanted to open a micro school for gifted students. So he's got 12 high schoolers, all of whom are advanced in academics. Most of them are on the college track. And so he's incorporating project-based learning, the Socratic method into his pedagogy. And his school's vision is to nurture these curious humans who ask why, who work on improving society. That's his vision. So it's really wonderful to see his school come to life. It's called Spiria Academy. And then I want to share a third one, which is Sarah Harrington in Virginia. I saw a few folks in Virginia. She started a school on a bus. She converted a bus into a mobile classroom. She built seats, she built a little kitchenette, even a bathroom. She really believes that the community should be the kids' classroom. So every morning, parents drop off their kids. She starts with the morning instructional period while the bus is parked, of course. They work on math and reading and science and writing. They eat lunch. And then Sarah gets in the driver's seat. And then she takes the kids to a local museum, a local pet shelter, a local art gallery, local anything. She's integrating those real world experiences into the education. Those kids are never going to forget that school. So this is called Solstice Hybrid Academy in Virginia. And I just love sharing these stories because probably a few years ago, we would have said this could be the future. But these are all real schools. They were all launched in the last few years. These are all real pictures of real founders and real kids. And so we're really excited about seeing these kids thrive, make academic gains, build friendships. And no one told these teachers what to do. No one told them, here's a school I want you to build. They all built it because they had a vision in their hearts for what they wanted to bring into the world. They built that thing, they recruited the families, and they're off and running. And so this is really what we want for all of you. So I'm going to pause for a second. Matt, do we have any questions?
Nothing specific around this. I think you're good to keep going.
Okay, sounds good. I am right on time, so it's a rarity for me to be on the money. So let's do
People,
it. So let's
people
go to
are
the.
people, people are loving it though. People
Okay,
are commenting
good.
how inspiring it is, and they love Solstice Hybrid. So all good stuff.
Good. I'm glad you guys know some of these folks that are wonderful. And I think a lot of our old founders or alumni, I shouldn't call them old, our alumni refer people to us. And that for us is the best sign that they've found value in the program and they want other people to benefit. So let me get into the topic du jour, which is financial success. This is such an important topic, and I'm going to slow it down a little bit here because I want us to spend a few minutes thinking about one, why it matters, which is easy, and two, how you should think about this, because this can be new to a lot of teachers who are starting schools. You may not have owned a business before. You may not have sort of had to plan for an income statement and a balance sheet for a business. The first thing I'll say is, as part of the Catalyst program, we're there for you. We'll help you through this. You don't have to do it alone. But today, I want to share a little bit of the overall framework for how we think about it. So the simple thing to start with is revenues and expenses, right? That's the two big things that any founder of any business or any nonprofit needs to think about. Revenues are the money that's coming in, right? And so the simple equation for revenues is the price that you set multiplied the number of enrollments that you have minus any discounts you give, right? A lot of founders give discounts for siblings, for military, for inaugural families, for maybe your landlord's kid, right? So the landlord gives you a break on rent and you give them a discount, right? So you can have lots of flexibility as a business owner on how to think about your pricing. So your revenues are very simple. It's your price times your enrollment minus your discounts. I can tell you from experience over 150 founders, 90% of people who start a micro school underprice themselves. They charge too little for what they're building. I had office hours with a founder a few months ago, and she's like, I'm going to do a 3-to-1 ratio, super specialized, tons of field trips. I'm going to take these kids to the museum and field trips, da da da. And I don't want to charge any more than $3,000 a year. I was like, you're building something that is better than any private school in the country. You should be charging more. And by the way, you can't make any money if you're charging $3,000 a year. You'll never be able to pay rent for that. But really, we find that educators underprice themselves because we have such a hard time with assigning value to our time. We've been beaten down. I used to be a teacher. We've been beaten down for so long. And so part of the Catalyst program's psychology is to say, you're building something, you are worth it. And the thing you're building is worth charging money for. And if you're lucky enough to live in one of the states that has an education savings account, then you can charge money and most families can then afford it. So that's price. We talk about enrollments and discounts we talked about. The second part of this equation is expenses, right? So expenses is three big buckets that we usually talk about to keep it very, very simple. Staff is your number one biggest bucket. And staff usually will be 60 to 70% of a microschool's cost. In your first year, it might just be you. If you are the only staff member and you're supporting 12 kids, your income comes out of the school's profits, right? So you are the staff cost. But then as you grow, you will hire more people. But generally speaking, staff costs are 60 to 70% of a microschool's overall budget. And then you get space, and there's so many options here for space. Some schools are in the home, so there's no cost for space. Some schools are in churches, which is a little bit more affordable. Some schools are in retail locations or office parks, which can be a little more expensive. So really it comes down to your school's vision and the ability to pay in your community. And that determines the cost for space. And generally we see 20 to 30% of a microschool's budget goes to space if it's not in the home. And then finally, you have other expenses like marketing, insurance, curriculum, cleaning fees, etc. So those kind of make up the three big buckets.
Hey, Amar, let me ask you a quick question that's coming
Yeah.
in from the team. What about those of us who want to do a school for underserved communities? We'd
Yes.
love to hear about funding options in the case that our families can't afford to pay. I saw a few
Great
people
question.
asking about that.
It is a wonderful question, and it really depends on your state. So, for example, if you live in Florida, you have access to the Education Savings Account program as a micro school, which means the families, even if they earn nothing, can still show up to your school with about $10,000 to spend. The state gives them that. If you live in Arizona, that's $8,000. So if you're one of those states, then the underserved question thankfully goes away because you have an education savings account to have these families choose your school. And about 12 or 13 states have universal education savings accounts. Other states have sort of limited ones that usually prioritize the lowest income families. If you live in a state that does not have an education savings account, it's really hard. I'm not going to lie to you. It's really hard to build a school for the most underprivileged families who can't afford to pay anything. And so there, usually I hear founders say, okay, I'm just going to raise a bunch of donations. I'm going to write grants. And I love that spirit, but I want to be realistic here for a minute. It's really hard to raise that much money. If you want to be able to support the cost of staff, the cost of space, and other expenses and run a somewhat decent program, you're going to need to raise about $100,000 a year. That's really hard to do on GoFundMe. It's really hard to write grants for that much money on a recurring basis. So if you're in one of those states, what we suggest is you actually start further up market. You start with a slightly more expensive program. And then you allocate a portion of each student's tuition to scholarships for underprivileged kids. This is how most colleges work. It's how most private schools work. You start with a slightly higher amount and then you discount it for people who can't afford it. And then over time, you build a buffer and you can serve a higher and higher percentage of those kids until hopefully your state also passes an education savings account program. But it's a tough journey for those of you who want to build a school for super underprivileged kids in states that don't have these programs. Okay. And then the final piece, of course, is your net income, which is your take home. It can be a nonprofit or for profit, but we sort of think of it the same way, revenues minus expenses. So you've got, 6 levers here at your disposal: price, enrollments, discounts, staff, space, and other expenses. And it's not more complicated than that. Those 6 determine the profitability, the sustainability of your school. And so I'm going to show you an income statement here and I'll walk you through this in a second. I know not everyone's comfortable with spreadsheets. I'm going to walk you through this, but it's not very complicated as a financial model. So here you see I've drawn out sort of a hypothetical income statement for a micro school that starts off in year one with 12 kids. And I'm assuming this is in Texas or Florida, where students will get about $10,000 a year from the education savings account. So if you set your price at roughly 10,000, you have 12 kids, your school's revenue the first year is $120,000. I'm not going to have any other teachers. I'm the founder, so I don't need to hire anyone else. So I don't have to pay anything else for salaries. I found a wonderful church space or community center or like a retail location. My rent is around 20K. Other costs like administrative costs are about 20K. That means I can take home $80,000. The average salary for a public school teacher in America is $56,000. So on average, you can actually earn a lot more with just one micro school with 12 kids. And sure enough, you won't want to stop there. When you see that your school is thriving, families love it, they want to send the siblings, the cousins, the neighbors. In year two, we usually see founders grow to more kids. And so let's say you double your size. You hire another full-time teacher. So now there's you plus another teacher for 24 kids. You're probably taking home about $100,000 that year. And then if you continue to expand, we have a few founders in our network who are in their second and third year. They have 40 kids. They can take home $100,000 to $150,000 a year. We don't do this for the money, but sure as heck helps to be rewarded for the hard work you're doing. And so I wanted to share this as a hypothetical statement. There's a lot of complexity here. This doesn't assume any discounts. So you're saying everyone's paying full price, I know. But really the idea here is you can make it work. You don't need hundreds of kids to make a school work. You need 12. You plus 12 kids in a beautiful space that you've converted, you can earn a really sustainable living. And that's the secret of microschooling. And whether you live in an urban area or even a rural area, 12 kids is 12 kids. You don't need hundreds, you need 12. And so that all of a sudden makes it possible to reimagine, say, I'm going to build a school on a bus. And hundreds of people won't want their kid to be learning on a bus, but 12 will. Right? Or I'm going to build a nature-based school. And hundreds of parents may not want that, but 12 will. And so you get to really be creative and build the school of your dreams because you only need 12. And then when you succeed that first year, then you get to double, you get to triple if you want to. So this is sort of the overall picture of microschooling, the financials. I want to take a stop here. I'm going to introduce our founders who are here from our prior cohorts. And then please keep asking your questions as well. We'll take them all at the end. Okay, so let's go to alumni spotlights. I'm going to stop sharing so you can see them. All right, Matt, do you mind spotlighting Joanna and Latoya? While you do that, I'm going to introduce the folks we have here. So Latoya is the founder of the Attuned Community School in Georgia. She was part of Catalyst, the very first cohort that we launched a couple of years ago. She started her school as a nature-based school where young children love to learn to love learning again. I just heard today that she has a wait list of 42 families for her school. And I love hearing that. Latoya's worked so hard over the last couple of years to build a wonderful space that kids thrive in. And then we've got Joanna here from Fuller Education. It's in Pennsylvania. She just launched this fall in October after she had her own baby. So she's been busy this last 12 months. She started with just a few kids in almost like a preschool daycare setup. I'm excited to have her talk about it. And next year she's planning to expand once she gets into her first full school year. So Joanna and Latoya, thank you so much for being here. Let me just start with Joanna first. Can you just tell people about your school, what makes it unique and what makes it special?
Sure. So I'm Joanna Cervantez. We start at age 3, so that starts us right off as being unique. It's a Christ-centered micro school. And my background, I love STEM, all things, even mathematics. And so that has been one of the markers for families that are interested. Even at age 3, kids can be doing coding and robotics, and I've got a group that loves it. And the last thing that makes me unique is that I support parents. And so I've got some families that are interested in homeschooling, but they don't feel like they're ready to do it themselves. There's a lot to take on. And so I actually do professional development for the parents.
Here we go. Latoya, how about you? Tell us about your school and what makes it unique and special.
So we are a hybrid homeschool and microschool. We're in Georgia. We prioritize hands-on experiential learning. So my belief is that learning should feel natural, engaging, and connected to the real world. I believe that all learning should be joyous. So instead of confining education to the four walls of our classroom, it's just our home base. So we embrace our entire community and nature as our classrooms. So we go to farm school, we go to forest school, we go horseback riding. We engage in a lot of service learning projects. Like tomorrow, the kids will be doing Shark Tank. And they went today to the nursing home to present their projects to the seniors there for practice. So I think really what makes my school unique and special for my community is that we are not the traditional
Mhm.
private school, and I am deeply rooted in the idea that children learn best when they feel connected to the environment that they're in, and I foster a community where they can build their own sense of self outside of adults. And so it makes us unique in a way because we integrate all of our social emotional learning with our academics so that children can truly thrive. We use a lot of nature walks, farmers markets, community service to kind of like teach math and build character. So we don't focus really on memorizing facts, but really living their learning.
Thank you. That's amazing. Can you talk, let's stick with you. What got you to take the leap to start your own school? It's not an
Um,
obvious thing for people to do.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I had a really traumatic time in public school, just to be honest. So I kind of just knew like because I served primarily children with disabilities when I worked in public school, primarily children who had autism or behavioral disorders. A lot of my families kind of struggled to find like spaces where the kids felt like honored and their needs were met. So even though they were with me in these self-contained spaces, they weren't really thriving. We were just all in there trying to survive, just trying to make it to the next day, to the end of the year. And so I'm just like, the kids are disengaged, I'm overwhelmed. We're kind of like back here in the corner on an island of our own, kind of feeling like unseen. And so I just knew like it was time. Something just in me said like enough is enough. This isn't gonna change. I'm getting out of here.
Joanna, how about you?
So I always knew I was going to start a school, but I didn't know it was going to be a micro school. And I feel like my life dissertation has been around figuring out how do kids learn best. My first job right out of college was teaching middle school math, seventh and eighth grade. And I feel like that's the last thing that most people want to teach. They're like, I don't want to teach math and I don't want to teach middle school. And I really saw that in seventh grade, the spark had already left. Our kids are no longer curious. And it's not starting just in seventh grade. That spark leaves maybe in third grade or in second grade. So I first started teaching in inner city Los Angeles. After 3 years living there and teaching there, I was like, I need to go deeper. So I moved to El Salvador and taught in an orphanage. And I just wanted to get more perspective. I was like, I need to understand third world poverty.
Mhm.
And continued this life dissertation after that. I went and got a master's and started going up the ladder of administration, doing coordinator and moving towards assistant principalship, and then realized I don't want to be in this system. This is actually not what I'm doing this for. And so I felt like I grabbed all of these perspectives in education. And the last thing I did was actually coach teachers and admin. And so with the UCLA Math Project. So at the end of all of these things coming together, I created for myself what is school? And really, I came to realize I actually need to unthink school. I have to deprogram myself and
Mhm.
rethink learning. And that's how I designed this micro school. And I almost don't even use the word school. I just say learning community because I want it to be about kids versus about management as a principal. Maybe it's about managing teachers, maybe in a district that misuses funds. This is really about putting kids at the center. And so I just feel like my life dissertation has been around how do kids learn best and how do we make this joyous and continue that curiosity that they have at age 3. I see it. They love learning and keep that going all the way through even their teen years.
This is, I mean, I see a lot of people sort of responding to you all speaking. This is such a common story, right? Of people who say, I kind of had this dream in my heart. I was struggling. I didn't feel like this is the right way to teach kids. And so I wanted to build it. This is the American journey of entrepreneurship in every sector in the economy. And it's finally coming to education. Joanne, for you, what are some of the things you do to make your student experience magical? You shared that someone today said something like, this is my dream school. What was the phrase they used?
Unicorn school.
Unicorn school. What is it that
Yeah.
made them say that about your school?
Yeah, that was a mom that said, I was looking for a unicorn school. I didn't think that it existed, and here it is. Much of what Latoya said, it's like the hands-on experiential learning. Kids are just, I'm going to give you another quote from a kid. I asked the mom, um, what does your son say about our school? And she asks him, what did you learn? And the student responds to mom saying, oh, no, we don't learn. We do activities.
Okay.
And I loved his response because for him, he doesn't even see how much he's learning. It's just, it's happening. Everything is hands-on, real world. And in early childhood education, it's as simple as setting up a dramatic play, right?
Mhm.
So like post office, dramatic play post office gives us a lot of space to talk about first name, last name, about like the numbers that are on our houses, and then sending letters to each other. And it's all about community. So everything that we do, it's not just about the activity, but it's about us connecting with each other. So
Mhm.
when the child leaves, they feel valued and heard and seen. And honestly, for them, it's like, I'm not even, am I learning? I'm having fun the entire time. Is this learning? So I think just what we do day in and
Yeah,
day out.
that's right. That's amazing. And Joanna, I just launched her school in October, so she's what, 4 or 5, 6 months in. So you
Five
can
months.
see
Yeah.
how quickly you can kind of grow in that journey. Latoya, how about you? What makes your student experience magical?
I think what's magical for me and even for the children is just the amount of time we spend outdoors. There's something so freeing about being outside with no shoes on, running through the grass, trampling through the forest, walking through the creek, catching fish with your hands, climbing trees. Something that you get during childhood, but is often cut short. But to watch some of my older kids be able to experience that is there's just something so freeing about that. And even just the connections, like seeing a 5-year-old and a 14-year-old or 16-year-old truly be friends with each other, like have a
Mhm.
true friendship. And just seeing that real world connection. Because, right, in the real world, your friends are not always all of you are just 6 years old. You have
Yeah.
friends that are older, you have friends that are younger. So, really watching them build those relationships and foster those relationships with each other, and they take care of each other. They truly, truly do. They value each other, they take care of each other, and they just love learning. Like they love to come to school. I'm like, y'all don't want a day off, but they love to come to school. They enjoy it. And it just, it keeps me going because it creates that spark.
The first time I heard a Microschool founder talk, they said something similar. And pardon my French, but I was like, that's bullshit. No kid loves to come. And it does happen. Our first Microschool we opened in Boston, the kids banded together and they made a club that was called Students Against Vacation. And 2 days before every like spring break or long weekend, they would email me saying, Mr. Kumar, we want Miss Kim to be there next week. And I was like, I can't do that. Like she's not going to come in. They're like, no, we can't not have our friends. We can't not be there. So then they would actually organize events and play date equivalents at each other's houses because they couldn't bear the thought of being apart from each other. What school builds that? What, like, that's just incredible to see the kind of connection these kids feel and just the
Mm.
emotional support that that school provides for them. And it doesn't take magic. It's just small groups, personalization, caring, involving the family. It's all the things that you all want to do anyway that maybe you weren't able to before. Let's talk about the theme of today, which is around financial success. This is hard, and some of you are enjoying you're in your first year, so you may not be there yet. Latoya, I know it's been a journey for you. Talk to us about managing your financials. Did you feel confident in this at the get-go? Has it taken time? Like, just share more with the founders and how they should be thinking about this journey.
For me, it's definitely taking time. I look at a lot of the questions that are in the chat about serving like underserviced children. And that's huge, especially, I live in kind of like not a rural area, but people here are still making $8 an hour. So for me to come in and say, like, oh, my tuition is X amount, and I'm gonna increase that. And we didn't get ESA until, it's just gonna launch next year.
Mhm.
So thinking about all those things, I kind of had a lot of dissonance and I grappled, with that. So it really took me talking to you all at KaiPod and kind of like playing psychology tricks with myself, letting myself know that what I was offering was valuable, that the knowledge and wisdom that I had gained, whether I paid for my degree or whatnot, all the things that I had experienced, they were worth a lot more than $250 a month because what we're giving these kids, there is no price on it. And it just took me honestly doing a lot of what you said, playing around with numbers, right? Like if I have families and I know they can afford it and it's not an issue for them, then charging that larger amount so that I can cover families who cannot afford it. And I've honestly been, I moved into the church. So building the community and connection with them because they're able to sponsor or fill in gaps for children who may be lacking. So just really figuring out ways to one, tell myself it's worth it. I'm valuable. I deserve that.
Yeah.
I deserve to not struggle. Two, thinking long term, right? You don't want to start this great school for kids and then next year it's closed and they don't have this is like children's education that we're thinking about. It has to be long term. So really kind of playing putting those things at the forefront of my mind and remembering that. And I think that I was just talking to Matt about this. Like I am now turning the corner. Like where before I was like, oh my gosh, I now am like turning the corner. So it takes time. It's not something that's going to happen immediately. But I think with a lot of coaching and just even knowing, like going in, knowing like, yes, this is going to be hard work, but I have to do the work so that I am sustainable, so that this is not a 1 or 2 year thing. This is something that's long term.
Absolutely right. Joanna, how about you?
So I mentioned being a unicorn school. I think I found a unicorn bookkeeper. I wanted a bookkeeper that could teach me. I didn't want to pass it off, hand it off. I wanted to be hands-on, just like my school is hands-on. Started off with QuickBooks and was so lost. It's like a whole other world. And I felt like I lost touch with what was going on with my finances. And I reconnected with an old friend, and it turns out that she'd started her own business using Google Sheets. You all, I now have my entire finances on Google Sheets with multiple tabs. It's a template she set up. It's trademarked. I can't share it. But it really gave me perspective because I know every cent. And as a prior math teacher, like that really makes me happy to know where things are going. But there's a lot to manage, right? Like you're managing your student experience, you're managing your families, but it's also important to manage your finances. So I would just say, like from the very beginning, don't just pass it off to another bookkeeper or just say, "Oh, QuickBooks has got it." Really get into the nitty gritty because I think it's going to give you a leg up as you continue to expand.
Thank you. I want to ask one final question around the sort of the mindset of applying to this program because we have what 130 something people here tonight. Most of them are considering applying. Some of them it looks like I know the names we've applied. You've applied. Some of you got an in already. but most of you are considering it. So Latoya and Joanna, as you think back to when you were in their shoes, maybe you were attending one of these webinars. Um, what got you to apply? What were some of the thoughts you had, the emotions you had thinking about, I think I want a partner to do this with? Latoya, you want to go first?
Oh, sure. I mean, community is in my school name because I just feel like this is not something you do in isolation. You cannot do this work alone. And so for me, it was really about finding someone that could kind of offer, not tell me what to do and hold my hand, but guide me, offer me guidance, offer me support, offer me that sort of community I needed. And really, KaiPod gave me the push to like push myself and say, like, don't go back into that classroom next year. You're going to be singing the same old song. Don't do it. And so just, Amar, we talked a lot that first year, talking to
Yeah.
you and just saying, you know what, I can do this. I have the knowledge. I may not know everything, right? It's not 100% perfect. But I have the ability to learn as I go. I have people that are backing me and supporting me. And so I need to go ahead and take that leap. And that's really what pushed me to say, go ahead and just take that leap.
Love it. Just take that leap. That should be our quote. Joanna, how about you? What got you to say, I'm going to do this?
Well, for KaiPod specifically, it was the autonomy. I love that you all support. I'm faith-based. I saw a question in there. I'm a Christ-centered microschool. And I didn't know if I would still be able to hold my own autonomy, and I do. Like, there's no micromanaging of my curriculum through KaiPod. There's no micromanaging of my mission, my vision, right? It really is that support. So autonomy is one of my core values, and I felt like that value was valued. So that was really big for me. And then the other thing that was really big for me was what you mentioned in your slides earlier, was that it's like you have a 3-year partnership. Like, we're really committed for 3 years, and beyond that, you're building a community. So of course it's more than that. But that was important to me because once I'm in it, I didn't want that. I couldn't call up somebody in 6 months, in 12 months, when something has gone down. I don't know what it might be, but I need support. And I feel like I've got that you guys have my back.
That's great. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I'll mention it in case people aren't aware. The way the Catalyst program works is you actually don't pay anything up front. We don't want to charge you. We are teachers. You have a lot of other things to think about. But as you're building your school, you don't pay anything for the program. It's only if and when you launch your school that we convert into a revenue share agreement. So essentially, we want to succeed if you succeed. And so we charge roughly 10% of your per student fee. So whatever your per student tuition is, let's say it's $800 a month, then we charge $80 a month. That's what you pay us. And so you get to decide your fee, you get to decide how many kids you have, but we really want to align our incentives with yours. That's really important for us. And that 10%, I see a question, is for 3 years. This cohort that's coming up, we're going to introduce a new option if people want, is you can pay up front. So for people who want to just pay up front, it's $10,000. You can just pay once. We don't think a lot of folks are going to want it, but we're going to offer it because some people did ask for it. The vast majority of people, 99% of the people, like the revenue share agreement because it's about a long-term partnership. That's the company I'm trying to build. And so we're going to offer that. That's for everyone. Okay. Thank you, Joanna and Latoya. I'm going to shift to the application piece of this learning clinic because I want people to understand the next steps. It's really important that everyone knows that before we leave tonight. So I'm going to go back to share, assuming you all can see it, but please tell me if not. Here's a little bit about the application process. So we have our next deadline coming up on February 19th. That is 8 short days away. And I want to sort of demystify the application today. It's not hard. We asked you some questions that you should be thinking about. Who are you? What is your why? Are you ready for this journey? And why do you think so? And even if you say, I don't think I'm ready, but here's what I'm going to do, that's okay too. Talk a little bit about your school vision, talk about your community and your thoughts on tuition. We just want to sort of see how you're thinking about it. There are no right answers, there are no wrong answers. But the goal is to make sure that you're thinking about this carefully, that you're really intentional about this journey. We want to understand why Catalyst is the program for you. There's other options that exist. We know we're the number one, but we want to make sure you're serious about the Catalyst program. And then we ask you to record a 1-minute video because I love seeing all of you talk. And really the goal there in the 1-minute video is for you to try sort of practice selling your school to a parent. And that's really valuable because for the first time for a lot of people in that video, they say it clicked. When they pretend they're talking to a parent about their school, they get really excited. And so you see that energy, you see that light, and we love seeing that in the video interview, in the 1-minute video. Once you submit an application, my team and I, we review every single application. Usually each application gets 2 reviews. Then we do a video interview. And so in that case, you get invited to a 30-minute one-on-one with me or someone on my team. And we just want to go deeper with you on why is this your journey? Why do you want to do this? Because we want to make sure you know what you're getting into, that you're serious about it, and that you want to be in a long-term partnership with us. And if you're one of those situations that I mentioned earlier, that I want to open a really high need school, 3-to-1 ratios for $3,000, we're going to be serious with you and tell you it's probably not going to work. And so the goal of the interview then is to say, how can we make it work? How can we create a different plan for you? And if you're excited about that plan, then we'll be excited to welcome you into the cohort. So really it can often be a working session, this interview, to make sure that your plan can really be relevant. And we admit applications on a rolling basis. So as applications come in, we review them, we interview them, and we accept them into the cohort. Our cohort is 60% full already, so we have sort of a cap on it. So we do really, really strongly encourage people apply early. You can imagine when any deadline comes up, we get this huge bolus of applications at the end. And so when that happens, we're sort of rapidly looking through applications. So we encourage people to do it early so that you're not caught up in that big rush. If you have your phone out, take a screenshot or a QR code thing of this thing. This is the apply button so that you can apply now. We had more than 400 people register for this webinar. We have almost 3,000 people who are getting our emails and have signed up for more information. We are expecting a huge influx of applications next week. So what we're suggesting is you're here tonight. If you can get your application in by Thursday, our team is all hands on deck, reviewing all the application. We're going to guarantee we'll review it before that influx. And we're going to guarantee review it. We get you in for an interview and accept you before that cohort fills up, because I love getting people in sooner so you can start working on your school. A lot of you are going to have questions. I may not have answered them all today, or you're just going to want a little bit of deep dive on something. So Matt, who is helping facilitate this webinar tonight, he's clearing his calendar to do 15-minute one-on-ones with people. If you look in your inbox, assuming the magic has worked, you should all have an email from him, which basically says, here's how you book time with him, here's how you submit the application, and he's going to do 15-minute one-on-ones to answer your questions and ideally get you started on the application. Because really, don't wait. Take that leap, as our founders said. Okay, so I want to get into some audience Q&A, but before I do that, because then I can just let that run as long as it's needed, I want to just make 3 closing points as a summary of what you've heard today. The first thing is Catalyst, this program, is not just a short-term program. It's not just, let me just sell you a textbook and go build your school. This is a supportive network. Founders like Joanna and Latoya are wonderful, but they're just 2 of a lot of founders who are there to help each other and help you. It's a really supported network that's committed to you and each other for the long term. You will have the resources that you're going to need to launch your school and scale your school. You'll have people to turn to for questions and a really incredible community for emotional support. The second thing I want to say is this program has been very thoughtfully designed for educators, for parents, for community leaders. It structures the entire program around the needs of a working professional. So we assume that most of you are probably in a classroom most days, or you have another job most days. So all of the work is self-paced. All of the sessions are usually in the evenings, or you do work in the weekends while you're planning your school. So the goal is from now until this fall, you're planning the launch of your school sort of at your pace. And then over the summer, you go full-time to earning income from that school, to launch that school. That's the plan. And so we align the entire program, all the financial incentives to fit the needs of people like you. And the third thing I want to say, which is something I don't always talk about, but I've been interviewing a lot of people and talking to them about this program, and I really hear this really interesting sentiment, is about the emotional journey of starting a school. It can be really exciting, but it can also be really intimidating, full of fear, full of anxiety. It's totally natural. And I know it because I went through it myself. I started this company a few years ago. I had a young child. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I started this because I knew that this needed to be in the world. And there's 150 other founders in our community who also felt that same feeling. So if you're feeling that now, that's natural. And usually in these talks, I talk about how great your life is going to be in 12 months once your school is launched. But today, I want to talk something different, which I heard from a founder, is when he took that first step and applied, he said something interesting happened. He said, first, during the application process, filling out the application reminded him of the reason he got into the work in the first place, the reason he became a teacher that he had forgotten over the last 8 or 10 years. So he really loved that. And his heart was racing as he was going through it and hitting submit. So it was something he said he hadn't felt in years. And it was the reason that he knew he was doing the right thing. And then the second thing is when he hit submit on the application, there was this overwhelming wave of emotion. This feeling that I am taking charge of my career. Someone else isn't going to tell me what I'm worth, or what I get to do, or how I get to teach. And I just love that feeling of there's this immediate payoff. And he said like my stress level went down. I started feeling good about my job again because I knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I was going to build something that I was going to love. And so I wanted to share that because I think a lot of people feel that. That it's not just about the long-term payoff. You actually start to feel that joy, that de-stress right away because you know you've taken that first step. Maybe that first step of the next step of your career. So I want every one of you to have that feeling because it's so powerful. So set yourself a goal today. There's 100 plus of you. Set yourself a goal. Today or by latest tomorrow, you're just going to take that first step. Fill out the application. Take some time to write out your thoughts. This is not an essay writing contest. Please don't make it perfect. I really want to just hear your thoughts. I want to hear how you think about this space, how you think about your community, how you feel about education. That's what we want to hear. So if you have a little bit of typo, grammar errors, we're not going to care. Don't spend a bunch of time putting it into AI and making it perfect. Make it yours. And I think once you hit submit, you're going to feel that renewed sense of purpose that will remind you that you deserve more. Okay, so I'm going to turn over to Q&A now. So Matt is going to help us facilitate the Q&A. He's going to tell me the questions we've seen because there's a lot in here. I hope we don't forget anyone's, but if we do, we're so sorry. You have our emails, respond, ask questions. We're there to help you through this entire process. So Matt, why don't you guide me, Latoya, and Joanna through some questions?
Okay, let's start with one that came up quite a bit about teacher, call it certification. Do you need to be a certified teacher in order to open a microschool?
Great question. Generally, no. If you have a certification, it can be very powerful for families, for other people. Like often people value that, but in most states, that is not a requirement to run a microschool.
Another question that's come up quite a bit is how do the programs align with, say, state standardized assessments and testing? Do
And good question.
do microschools need to comply with state standards?
Once again, it really depends on the state. However, for the most part, microschools have a lot of flexibility on this. And often that flexibility mirrors private school standards or homeschooling standards, right? Most private schools don't actually have to adhere to your state's standards. Those standards are generally for traditional public schools. So if you're opening a private school, you don't necessarily have to teach to those standards if you don't want to. In some states, if you take the education savings account, there will be a requirement to take either the state's standardized test once a year or an
Okay.
equivalent test like MAP or iReady. So only if you accept those funds, you'll have to take that once a year. But other than that, there's a lot of flexibility.
And someone asked to follow up along those lines. They asked about when will KaiPod have accreditation status updated?
I can't reveal that yet because we can't promise anything. Accreditation is such a slow process, as you probably know if you've been through it. However, accreditation is so important to so many schools in these new states. So we're working on it. We expect it'll be this spring, which means for any new schools that are coming in, they will be able to start on the path to accreditation as they're building their school.
Got it. Does KaiPod have a good way to assess needs in the community? So this one person was specifically referencing West Orlando. They wanted to know if that would be a good community.
We can help you with that as part of the program. We have sort of this playbook on how you do market research, how you find families, how you generate interest, how you plug into local social groups. So that's how you would gauge your interest. But my hypothesis is that nationally, there's no community that's not a good fit. There's just parents coming all over the place saying, I need a new option. Some will be better than others. And if you're in Orlando, that means you have access to the education savings account. So that means you're probably going to have a pretty good chance.
I'll pivot over to the fee structure. So a couple of questions about the $10,000 flat fee versus the 10% rev share for 3 years. I think if you could just clarify, the 10K is a one-time fee.
Yep.
Does it still entitle them to 3 years of support?
It's for 1 year of support. And the idea is after that, you can renew it for a renewable price. But this is the first time we're offering it, so we haven't decided yet what that is. But most likely it'll be in the same order of magnitude.
Okay, great.
But it's meant for founders who say, I know what I want. It's a very specific thing. I want support for a year once I get started. And so we wanted to be able to support that group of founders. But like I said before, we don't expect most people will take advantage of that. Most people will want that standard long-term partnership.
Okay, great. Maybe you can touch on a little bit about curriculum. Seems like a lot of questions about curriculum, and I'll guide you a little bit. So what they're asking is maybe they want a specific curriculum. Can you explain how the curriculum is chosen?
Yeah, happy to. We have a lot of support in curriculum. This is one of the most complicated but important decisions you're going to have to make. There are probably 200 to 300 different options that we've looked at. We've evaluated and we put into our curriculum resource tool. And so when you get into that module in the course, you can actually navigate that entire tool. You can say, okay, I want a faith-based curriculum, or I want a digital or print-based curriculum for eighth graders. I want math. So you can choose from all of the ones we've evaluated. And then you can book office hours with our team to sort of go deeper into what those options are. We run a bunch of microschools ourselves in addition to this Catalyst program. So we've often seen these curricula in action. So we know who it works well for, or who may not. So we'll give you a ton of one-on-one guidance on these things. And then in some cases, we have discounts with these partners as well.
And it seems like a few people are specifically asking about neurodivergent curriculums or neurodivergent
Yeah,
schools.
there's a lot. I love seeing how many new options exist now for neurodivergent students. I saw there was a question about queer students as well. Yes, I haven't seen too many curriculum options for queer students specifically, but we are starting to see microschools emerge for kids who may have been bullied or just looking for a different environment. And so we're so proud to support that. But less on the curriculum side. I don't see any real wonderful curriculum yet for that population, but neurodivergent, tons.
Great. Maybe talk a little bit about the timetable. So people who
Yep.
are entering this cohort, which starts in early March,
Yep.
that would set them up to launch their school in the fall of 2025, correct?
That's correct. You'll launch this fall. It is possible, believe it or not.
And then the
Latoya, you
next,
started your cohort in March, didn't you? Your cohort was also in March. Joanna, yours was a little earlier, but Latoya's was in March. Yeah.
and then the next cohort that we would offer would probably be in the fall around
Yep.
October.
Yeah, we like to do 2 a year. We're seeing a lot of demand this year, but we're probably still planning on 2. There's a fall and a spring cohort.
Great. And someone asked and I answered it, but maybe you can just make sure I answered it correctly. They asked about the acceptance rate. And I said, historically, it's been about 20%, 25%. Is that pretty close to
It
what
goes
you
up and down. Yeah. We try to keep it around 10%. In some cohorts, we accept more because, especially if you have more time to work on your school, we accept a little bit more because we know that there's a higher chance of success. But it floats around that number,
Great.
which I know is a big pain point for you, Matt. But we like to keep it selective. We really want the absolute highest potential founders in this group.
Great. Those are most of the questions. I don't think I missed too many.
I see one here about the 2 hour curriculum from Quinn. Yes, I have heard of the 2 hours from the Alpha School team. It is interesting. I think the price point can be a blocker for a lot of people. It's tens of thousands of dollars for that curriculum. But the early results on that seem really good. So at least from what I've heard from people who have seen it in action, it's exciting. I think over time it'll become more affordable for a lot more people.
Some people are saying my audio stinks, so sorry about that. That's Amar's fault. I need a new computer. What countries, are eligible to apply? This individual's in Australia.
Anyone is eligible to apply, but I want to tell you our focus is the United States. We just know the market, we know the microschooling regulation, we know the curriculum, our software works in the United States. So if you're in other countries, we have founders in Canada and Jamaica. We will support you if you're interested, but it's on a case by case basis. I don't promise because I want to make sure if you join and we send you a contract that we're going to be able to help you. And so we don't take on anything that we can't help. So we've turned a lot of international founders down because I can't be confident that we can help you. But it's a case by case basis. If you really want to do this, apply, and then we'll interview and we'll talk through it.
Great. We're asking, yes, this is being recorded. We'll email it out to you all tomorrow. Maybe you could talk just quickly. I think we only have like a minute or two left, but do we provide support for addressing the needs of multi-age grades within the same school?
Yes, that's actually the majority. I think Latoya, Joanna, yours are both multi-age. The vast majority of our microschools are multi-age classrooms. There's just so much research that says that's great for kids. You don't have to do it that way, but it's highly recommended because it is just so much better for the kids. So yes, we do provide that.
This person is asking, can you please speak on Autism Montessori School?
Well, I don't know what that means. Is that a brand of school? Autism Montessori?
If it's a specific type, maybe the person asking can clarify that one. Okay.
It's Vivian Kane, and I'm asking in regards to a Montessori curriculum designed specifically to support and
Yes.
educate children with autism.
Yeah. It is very common. We have a lot of special needs, especially autism-focused microschools in our network. Our own schools are very heavily Montessori inspired, and we have a lot of students with autism in our microschools. So yes, we have a ton of support for that.
And so I'm trying to figure out, how does that fit in with the model that you have?
In what way?
Like support, like
Mhm.
Montessori has its own didactic tools and ways of learning.
Yep.
And so many of the things that I see that you provide are technology, curriculums that doesn't quite fit the
Yeah.
Montessori,
Sure.
but as they become more abstract learners, it is applicable, but not
Mhm.
necessarily initially for the hands-on environment in a Montessori setting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to clarify, we don't provide curriculum, right? I'm not going to tell you use my curriculum. I don't think that's the right approach for microschooling. But what we're going to help you with is if you want to open a Montessori school, we're going to help you pick the right Montessori curriculum, the right Montessori approach. So it's sort of you bring your school vision and we help sort of fill in the rest of the gaps on how to start a school. Regulation, finding your space, marketing, etc.
What if you're a little bit seasoned in that area? Like, I have a 20,000 square foot facility that I renovated for the purpose of a autism Montessori school.
Yeah, it's probably not a micro school at that point. It's probably a large private school. But we review those on a case by case basis. If you're interested, I suggest you still apply. And as part of the interview, we'll kind of talk through if this is a right fit. It may not be the right fit.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
understandable.
And you should look into Wildflower. Wildflower is obviously a very Montessori focused sort of accelerator program for founders. So if you really just want to do Montessori in sort of a larger space, you should really consider the Wildflower program. We love those guys.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right, why don't we take this as the last question because we're at time. Do you encourage microschools inside homes?
It is your decision. I think it has pros and cons. If your microschool is in your home, your space is the kid's space. It's hard to draw boundaries. However, it's cheap. You can get started without a lot of money. So it really depends on your model and the types of families you want to serve. If you're predominantly serving homeschooling families, then actually it might naturally lend to comfort if it's in someone's home. But if you want to operate more like a private school, a little bit more of like a full-time, less hybrid model, then I'd suggest you look for some sort of a separate institutional space that would be helpful. But it really is your decision. We have founders across that entire spectrum in our network, so we can help you think through it. Obviously, if it's in your home, you got to think about zoning, occupancy, neighbors, lots of other things that come into consideration.
Great. Why don't we
Matt,
make
I
it-
can stay on. If people want to ask questions, I'll stay on for
Oh,
10, 15 more minutes. I don't mind. Latoya and Joanna, you guys have had full days with kids. I want to first just thank you for being here in the evening, especially after being with kids all day. You're welcome to hop off if you'd like. And for anyone else, thank you for being here. If you want to stay to ask questions, please do so. Otherwise, we wish you good night, and I really hope you apply.
Great, so let's keep it rolling. I think we answered this already, but if they don't know what kind of curriculum that they want, we'll help guide them along that.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of our support program. Yep.
Great. Can you start a school serving neurodivergent students without a special ed certification?
You can. I would suggest you start off as like a homeschool support center, like a hybrid school, like Latoya was mentioning. That can often be the most attractive way to get going. Alexandra, who I mentioned from Florida, that's how she's starting, and that's still how she's operating. It can be a real life changer, game changer for these families.
I think
You don't
this
need a
is
special education certification for that.
great. Do you have virtual micro schools? I believe we do.
My favorite question. I love the idea of a virtual micro school. But I have not yet met a founder who convinced me that they knew how to do it right. So let that be a challenge to you. If you really want to run a virtual micro school, it's going to be hard to do because the reason families choose micro schools is for that intense sense of community. And it can be hard, but not impossible to do it virtually for kids. So when I interview founders who have a really strong interest in doing a virtual micro school, I ask them that question is, how will you build community? What's your plan? And so far, I've met two people who convinced me they're in our program, but for the most part, it's hard. So, but it's not a no. It's a you got to convince me.
Okay.
Ardia, your question, yes. If you don't get accepted into this upcoming cohort, you can always reapply again. We have a new thing called Catalyst Learn, which is sort of a subset of the course to help you get started. So you're not waiting till October. For anyone who didn't get into this cohort, you get access to that. You don't get access to the rest of it yet, but you're always welcome to reapply. We have a lot of founders who apply a second or third time, and they've taken the time to work on their vision or understand their community better, and they're able to get in.
Maurice is asking, can we address the issue of year 9 through 12 students that require more specialist teachers?
Yeah, so I think this is around subject matters. We hear this question a lot too, is how do you really do a micro school, high school with one teacher? And the answer to that is you change your definition of teacher. You're not there to teach, you're there to guide and support kids. You're there to coach them. So if you have a high school, micro school, I suggest you pick a curriculum that does the quote instruction part of it, or all the subjects. And then your job becomes to coach these students, to help them understand how you set goals, how you plan the day, how you answer questions that you're struggling with. And so high school micro schools can work. Jordan, who I mentioned, he's a single teacher high school micro school. Sarah, who's in Austin, she runs a single teacher high school micro school. It's absolutely possible, but you just have to be a little bit more intentional about the curriculum you pick.
Good. What about transporting children? Can they ride in your vehicle? That was Latoya has that challenge, I believe.
Yeah, it depends on your state and the insurance that you've selected. You can do it. You need special insurance for that vehicle. It needs to be a business policy on your vehicle. It is possible, not impossible, but you just need a plan for it.
Stephanie is asking, when I fill out my application, will the person who interviews me be able to talk with me about whether a microschool is going to be
Yeah,
financially
you
sustainable?
can bet on it. You can bet on it. That's a really important part of the interview. If we don't feel it's going to be sustainable, we want to actually focus the interview on that because we don't want to lead anyone down the wrong path.
And Yinka was asking, if we get started in the cohort and something happens and they can't continue, will we owe you anything?
I should have mentioned this earlier. No, you don't owe me anything. Often we find founders defer. So they say, oh, like we had an illness or something. I want to defer for a year. And we're happy to do that for anyone who wants to wait a year. But if you just say, nope, this is not for me, I've decided I'm not going to launch a school, then you don't owe us anything. We wish you well. But until that point, we're going to push you to launch your school.
Great. That was the last question. If anyone has any other questions, going once, going twice, paste it in quickly. I might have missed some above, so if I did, repaste. I have so many ideas, but I think the easiest thing for now is to be a learning center pod for homeschool students.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
It is absolutely okay. That's how I started KaiPod. That was our very first pod, was a homeschool pod or a learning pod for homeschool students. Pod is literally in the name.
Can a microschool in the US accept international students?
In a physical school, yes, of course it can. Virtually, of course, yes. So yes, in both cases, you can.
Someone's asking about the pros and cons of nonprofit versus for-profit status.
Oh yeah, this is a really important question. In fact, I'm going to record a video for our founders about this tomorrow. I just wrote it out, wrote my script out. This is a very important decision, but also it's not an irreversible decision. So there's a lot of pros and cons, and you can look at a lot of free online resources for this. Generally speaking, just generally speaking, I'm not an attorney, I'm not an accountant. We say start for profit. It's just the fastest to get going. You have full control over what you want to do. And it doesn't change about how much money you charge. It doesn't change how much money you make. It doesn't change any of those things, but it just gets you going. Whereas a nonprofit, there's a lot more paperwork, there's a lot more board setups, there's a lot more approvals that can slow you down. And the other reason I recommend you should start with a for-profit is it's always easy to go the other direction. If you start as a for-profit, you're like, you know what? I really need to be a nonprofit for whatever reason. It's very easy to go in that direction. But if you're a nonprofit and you want to become a for-profit, it's a little trickier. You can imagine the IRS gets a little more interested. So start with the easy path, get it moving, get your school live, and then decide what else to do.
Great. Do you have resources to help us get a building school rental place?
A place you want to rent for your school? Yes, we have some. Obviously, we can't be in every community that you're in. So we have a lot of partnerships with realtors, with national retail and commercial space agencies. So we can help you connect to those. But to be honest, most of this is going to be you and your community. You're going around, driving around to spaces, you're finding your own broker. You might be talking to a church in your community. We have all the templates for you, we have all the support for you, but the legwork on this is you. Right. In building your school, the legwork is you. You're the one talking to families. You're the one kind of finding the space. We're there every step of the way, but we're not with you in person. And this is a very in-person endeavor.
I think you answered this before. Do founders have different backgrounds? Do you have to be a K through 12 educator?
Oh gosh, no. Yeah. I think the vast majority just happen to be public school educators in our program just because of the trends we're seeing nationally. But we have a lot of homeschool parents who want to turn their passion into a microschool. We have church leaders, community leaders, entrepreneurs who are starting schools. The obvious difference is if you are not a teacher by training or an educator, you either need to get smart on it or you hire someone for it. Oh no, we missed Tiffany's question. Matt, what's Tiffany's question? Or Tiffany, you can come off of mute. What question did we miss?
Sorry, Tiff.
Are there founders with multiple pods? Tiffany, is that your question?
Right. I'm definitely looking, of course, not in the first year, but the possibility of creating a network of microschool pods and collab.
Yes.
So
1000%. I was talking to two different founders this week about that exact thing. One of them is in Tennessee. She had 12 kids her first day she launched. She has 24 kids today, 6 months later, and she wants to get to 70 to 80 kids next year. And she's going to expand it in multiple sites. So each site feels small, but it's connected. So yes, depending on your community, the families, we absolutely recommend you think about it, but don't do it the first year. The first year, focus on getting it right. If you think too big too quickly, you can actually hurt yourself. Are we able to help founders with zoning? Yes, we help you figure out zoning. We obviously can't represent you in a zoning hearing, but yes, this is a huge piece of our support for people. Dr. Mia, what was your question? Existing LLC, can we do DBA? Yes, you can. It's very common. If you already have an LLC or if you already have a nonprofit, then that's the fastest way to get started. Don't go create something else. Don't pay attorneys for that stuff. Just start. And if you have an LLC, then you can just put your microschool under that. And the DBA, which is doing business as you mentioned, is the fastest way to get your school up and running.
Did I miss any or any other questions, or are you guys good?
It's hard. These chats are coming fast. Sorry if we missed your question. Hybrid schools. Let me find your question. Do we support hybrid model schools? Do you want to come off of mute, Serenity, and tell me what you think, what you mean by that?
Hello. Just wondering, do you support the hybrid model, meaning that the students will be in school, like a physical classroom, for maybe like 2 to 3 days a week, and then the rest of the assignments will be done at home?
Absolutely. Yes, we have a lot of founders who do that. Hybrid can mean lots of things in this space, but your definition, yes, we can do that. Or you can do that, and we support you with that. Is there a year that founders struggle to keep going? That's a great question, Bethany. Each year brings a different challenge. The first year, the biggest challenge is enrollment. Can I fill my seats? That's most important. The second year, it's usually around stability. I need this, like I have 12 kids, 20 kids, sometimes 30 kids. And so it can feel like there's a lot of chaos. And so you want to bring order to the chaos. And the third year, once you've managed the chaos, your full word is spreading, you start thinking about academic success. So it's a different challenge. The challenges get harder and better over time. But we don't see that there's one particular failure point. The biggest failure point is failure to launch. When people just say, oh, this is really hard, I don't want to do this. Or I couldn't get anyone to agree or get excited about my vision. That does happen. But once you get going, then that treadmill just starts spinning. And that's really fun. Stephanie, for it to start, just start the application, get moving. You're going to have an amazing cohort of people who are going to push you along. This is amazing work.
Yeah, I'm sure Latoya and Joanna were feeling the way you all felt. You know,
Yeah.
they had to
Oh,
walk this
100%.
along.
100%.
Yeah. Well, good, Dr. Mia. That's awesome.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Matt. Thanks to Latoya and Joanna who had to step away. But I really appreciate that you took the time tonight to join, to stay on extra, to ask your questions. I ask you one more favor. Take the application seriously. Like if you're thinking about it, just feel that feeling of excitement as you're filling it out. And then that feeling of I'm taking charge when you're hitting submit. I think it's a really important thing that educators need to feel, that they're in charge. And so we'll leave you with that and have a wonderful evening.